Hello everyone, thanks for checking out my video. In the last few years, we've seen some very interesting developments in the DeFi space, from the early stages of Ethereum and token swap on Uniswap to the later developments on Binance Smart Chain or Solana, where we have decreased fees and faster transactions. But it's not quite there yet, is it? Well, I am going to take some time today to interview Grant Gerber of Kadex, which is a decentralized exchange running on the Kadena network. And we're going to talk about the ways in which Cadex is breaking down barriers for making swaps on the Kadena network, and how their partnership with the Flux network really seeks to help decentralize the whole operation. So, without further ado, enjoy this interview with Grant Gerber. Grant Gerber, welcome to the Flux Report.
Thank you, Goose, for having me. Really appreciate being here on this opportunity. This is really exciting.
Good. I'm so glad that you're excited, because so am I, given all of the interesting developments that are happening between the Flux ecosystem, the Kadena ecosystem, and now Cadex. So I would really like to kind of see where you're coming from. And I was wondering perhaps maybe you could give us a little bit about your background and how you got involved with Cadex.
Sure. Yeah. So my background is, it's not a traditional background when it comes to getting into crypto. And I think that's actually what gives me a sort of new perspective on how we look at governance and decentralization. But I come from like an event production background, right? So I was essentially what's referred to as like a production manager. I was managing live events all over the Bay Area, and sort of working to manage a few different venues as well. I started fully working in crypto right at the beginning of the pandemic. Everything I was doing shut down. I was, a little frustrated with this sort of outlook that the rest of the world had taken on like what an essential job was. And that, my skill set just was like, nope, sorry, you have no value anymore. Like, stay at home, don't do anything. And so I started to fall in love with this idea of like what a DAO is, and that anyone can sort of like freely enter a new sort of environment and provide value to that space, and then be rewarded for that value without having to go through like an accreditation process or something.
Okay, so a DAO, that's a decentralized autonomous organization, right?
Yeah, yes. So it's sort of it's a way of looking at work, at least in my eyes and my interpretation of a DAO, where you have like a collective sort of consciousness in a way, where a group of people who have a similar interests basically get together to build something that they all believe in. So in the case of Cadex, it'll be primarily the DEX itself. Mm-hmm. So the DAO will run everything in Cadex, from incentivization of different pools, parameterizing them, grants program, bounty program, all kinds of different stuff. So I'm just really excited to be building out the DAO infrastructure for Cadex itself.
Okay, and when you say DEX, right, just to bring everybody up to speed, because we could have people who are brand new to the space listening.
Of course.
What does DEX stand for?
So DEX is short for decentralized exchange. Okay. And effectively, a decentralized exchange is a way of exchanging assets without having to go through an order book type system. In traditional trading on like a centralized exchange, for example, you submit orders, you put up your assets for sale, people can purchase them from the order book, you can purchase assets from the order book at either spot price or set prices or whatnot. But a DEX uses what's called an AMM, which is an automated market maker. And it's a way of interacting with different pools of assets to ensure that if you want to trade for an asset, you don't have to worry about certain, like an order book per se. You can just exchange them without ever having to worry about creating issues there.
Is that tending more towards a peer-to-peer type of an exchange versus what people may be familiar with on more centralized exchanges with order books?
I think it's peer-to-peer in a sense, right? There's essentially two distinct parties interacting in the DEX. There's the liquidity providers, who are the people who are providing liquidity to the pools, and then the actual traders themselves. So when you're a liquidity provider, you're basically providing two assets to a pool. Let's say it's, in the case of Cadex, it could be like KBTC and KUSD. So you would provide a 50-50 ratio, or with Cadex, you can actually do single-sided liquidity provision. So you could do 100% of your provided liquidity in the form of KBTC to a pool. By providing liquidity to a pool, anytime somebody trades within that liquidity pool, you actually earn 0.3% of their trade as a fee paid back to you. And that can either be in the native assets of the pool itself, which in this case is KBTC and KUSD, or you can receive an incentivized amount of KDX, which is the incentivization amount, of course, is controllable by the DAO itself based on market conditions and whatnot. That could be slightly more than the fees you would earn from just getting the normal assets back. And that's, of course, subject to a slight time lock to prevent just like dumping and rebuying and dumping and rebuying and sort of just like,
sure,
creating a bad process there.
Gaming the system, basically.
Yeah.
So the DAO essentially helps to govern the terms of how this is all put together.
Yes. Yeah. So at the onset, the DAO will basically have, there will be like general parameters put in place initially that will be sort of from the onset of everything. It's like, this is the baseline for how pool incentivization works. And then as the market changes and as things adjust, the DAO can, of course, put forward proposals to say, hey, this pair isn't doing so hot. Maybe we could bring people to it by upping the KDX rewards in it or something like that. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of ways for the DAO to actually sort of interact with the system and trading and whatnot, which is really exciting for us. We think it'll be a very, very popular system and very popular DAO itself. And we've actually, sorry, go ahead.
Seems like that would be a way to involve more people than just, say, I don't know, a board of directors, for instance. I mean, this is a lot larger group of involvement.
Yes. I mean, it's the goal of it is to basically invite anyone who wants to participate into the system. We want anyone to be able to come in and learn and educate themselves. We're looking at building like a full onboarding process as well for the DAO. That would include like economics 101, tokenomics 101, like smart contracts, like basic education on all of this stuff. Not necessarily as a prerequisite, but just like optional reading and optional learning for everyone who wants to come in. And we're also going to include a sort of social governance system as well in the form of Vibe Dust. And so participants in the DAO, actually, it's not all about the amount of KDX you have, but it's about how much you're contributing to the system itself in terms of like what you bring to the table.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of K stuff. And before we get too deep into all of the wonderful inner workings of this, I do want to kind of touch upon where this all stems from, right? Because it's largely rooted in Kadena, right?
Yes.
Because the token is actually running on the Kadena network.
Oh yeah, I totally didn't say that. Oh my goodness.
So tell me a little bit about how Cadex is connected to the parent blockchain, which is Kadena.
Sure. So Kadena, for those of you who don't know, it's a layer 1 proof of work blockchain that achieves near infinite scalability through its chain web protocol. It's a multi-chain system, and as each of those chains gets congested, Kadena can expand into additional chains to up the overall TPS and spread load across the rest of the network. So it's and then what's really cool is actually as it scales that way through adding more chains, the network becomes more secure and more decentralized. Doug Beardsley, who's the head of engineering, or excuse me, director of engineering at Kadena, actually gave a fantastic presentation about this at DecentralCon, and about how ChainWeb works. It was really cool. But we decided to build on Kadena because we felt that one of the things Kadena really, really does that really stood out to us is that it actually solves the trilemma. And the trilemma is, of course, the major problem in blockchain of decentralization, scalability, and security. And typically, products can only achieve two of those three or one of those three. But Kadena actually is able to do all three of those. Security, it ensures through the nature of its smart contract language called Pact. Pact allows for sort of runtime analysis on all smart contracts that are on the network, as well as it being rooted in sort of it's a non-Turing complete language, which means you can functionally limit the number of inputs and outputs of your individual smart contracts, which ensures that things don't get out of whack, and like you can prevent certain exploits from happening that would occur in Solidity, for example.
Okay, so it's an upgrade to typical smart contract language.
Yeah,
in terms of simplicity and also security.
Yeah, it's designed to be. It's bespoke. It's a bespoke smart contract language designed from the ground up to be human readable and very easy to work with. One of the goals of it is ultimately just that anyone can like look at a Pact smart contract and have an understanding of what's happening and what's going on, which I think is really important in blockchain, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of projects out there that have these like absolutely insane like smart contracts that are massive and monstrous, and for the average person who we're trying to convert and get to participate in this world, it can be very overwhelming.
Sure.
So
we know what it was like when we first started. So
yeah, oh for sure,
overwhelming to say the least. But when you look at these that type of a language, we have kind of, and I'm not here to like shine a light on anybody. I'm not here to make waves. But there was a very recent smart contract issue with a popular bridge with Ethereum and another chain.
I'm familiar with this exploit in this bridge.
Exactly. So how does Kadena then kind of offer a solution to something like that? Because Kadena has bridges too.
Kadena, yeah. So Kadena does have decentralized bridges in the form, I think they're the chain relays, if I'm not mistaken. I think one of the main issues with that exploit was that it allowed a reversible transaction on one end that allowed the removal of liquidity. I don't believe that's possible in the chain relays and in Kadena's decentralized bridges. And so it sort of works to solve that issue.
Yeah, almost like at a fundamental level then. So it's
right.
It's not even
it's just not possible.
Yeah.
And that's just sort of the nature of Pact, is that you can specify like exactly what a smart contract like can and can't do. And of course you can do that with other smart contracts, but you can get very granular with it with Pact.
Mm-hmm. So as these bridges go, and the reason I bring that up is because you mentioned KBTC and KUSD, right? And there would necessarily need to be some mechanism by which you would get your actual BTC into the Kadena ecosystem in the form of a token, right?
Sure.
Same goes for the KUSD. So that's a bridging aspect. So when we get to Cadex and the tokens that'll be swappable there, there will be, necessarily have to be some way of exchanging or going through a bridge, over a bridge, into the tokenized space so that you can take advantage of the smart contract and the DAO and everything else.
Right.
Okay, so that gives us some pretty good background on Kadena, that certainly making some very interesting progress with the smart contract, the packed language, the chain weaver, and all of this. What about Cadex now? How does that fit into the Kadena ecosystem?
So we are we're a DEX on Kadena, of course. And so when creating and looking at these DeFi ecosystems, DEXs are incredibly important for the overall success of blockchains of layer ones themselves. If users don't have a simple way to exchange assets and interact with different dApps, then it becomes almost impossible to actually function within that layer one. Mm-hmm. I mean, like every individual dApp is going to have, for the most part, its own utility token that requires some type of use. And you can either get that token through the dApp itself, or you can exchange one of your tokens for one of those tokens. So DEXs provide this very fundamental level of infrastructure for Kadena and just for blockchains in general.
What about some benefits of running a DEX on Kadena? Because I think perhaps most people who are in the DeFi space are familiar with, stuff like Uniswap or SushiSwap, PancakeSwap. As soon as, for instance, like when Pancake came out, that was running on Binance Smart Chain, right? So it was much faster, much cheaper. So what kind of advantages do we have running on Kadena versus like Ethereum?
PancakeSwap, much faster, much cheaper, but more secure. I think that becomes an issue because Binance doesn't really solve the trilemma. And also Binance is incredibly centralized. So just throwing that out there.
Right. So what you were saying earlier about as Kadena grows and adds more chains, that just further decentralizes whatever transacting is going on.
Which secures the network further.
Okay.
But when we're looking at the trilemma as this solvable problem and places that we want to build that we feel sort of really embody what it means to be blockchain and, what it means to grow these systems, we of course want to build on a system that is an embodiment of all of these things. So Ethereum, of course, has issues with gas fees. Like if you're trading on Uniswap, I think the average gas fee is like $65 or something, which is incredibly expensive. Like there's no way around it. A $65 transaction fee, regardless of the size of the transaction, is ridiculous. I mean, maybe if you're for whales, it's not an issue, but not everyone is a whale, and we want to be able to build DeFi for the common person who isn't going to spend $65 on a transaction fee, which is actually why we've made Cadex completely gas-free. We subsidize the cost of gas for all of our users. And that's we're able to do that because of how cheap gas is on Kadena. And that's a result of how well Kadena scales, and, et cetera, et cetera. So we can sort of go down this rabbit hole of saying like, all right, well, Kadena, we can make incredibly secure smart contracts that ensure that our DeFi ecosystem is very secure. We can ensure it's fast because it's a simple system. Like everything executes very quickly. It has a very high TPS, and that's without even getting into using Kuro. I mean, if we were to implement Kuro, we could achieve over 480,000 TPS, like very easily.
Nice.
Which I don't think anyone else comes close to right now. But it's still incredibly fast even without Kuro. And because of the security of the smart contract language itself and how we can write smart contracts, users will know that their assets are actually safe and there's no rugs and everything is open source. Everything is on chain and readable, and it's all human readable too.
Yeah.
so it doesn't become an issue for people to just like have to wonder exactly what's going on.
You don't have to be a coder to understand the smart contracts on Kadena.
No. I mean, if you have a background in some language, of course, you're going to have an easier time understanding it. But at its core, I mean, all of the smart contracts I've seen on Kadena as well have had very good commenting structures within the repos, which is incredibly helpful for people who don't have that coding background and are able to like, okay, like this is what this function does, this is what that function does, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, that's helpful.
So
and you know, most people,
helpful,
they're not researching that stuff. You know, I think most people, they see a project, they figure, all right, let me give it a try. And because most of the code is behind the scenes, it's not in the, you don't see that in the UI or anything.
No,
unless you search
you
for
know,
it.
I think putting code directly in the UI tends to just, it's not really to anyone's major benefit. It can just overly complicate a situation.
Right.
I mean, of course, when you're signing a transaction, you want to know what the code is for what you're signing, and you should always, you know, verify the code of what you're signing. And so an X wallet actually, X wallet is a wallet that the Cadex team, we've actually released, by the way. It's a full web extension wallet native to Kadena. We've just hit about 3,000 users on it as well, which we're really excited about.
Great. And that functions as an extension on, for what? Do you do Chrome, Firefox?
I use it in Brave. It functions in Brave and Chrome right now.
Okay.
We are looking at expanding it to additional browsers as well.
Great.
But I think if you're creative, you can get it to work in almost any browser.
Mm-hmm. It's not the only wallet that can work with it, though.
With Kadena? No. There's actually Zelkor as well, which is built in part by Flux, I believe. Right? It's like a subsidiary.
It's absolutely connected to Flux.
Yeah.
Flux is the open source side of the ecosystem, and Zelkor is its own corporation in a sense. You know, that has its own CEO and is offering different. Really, just the visual side of. So we got Flux is the under the hood, and Zelkor is the pretty with all the nice buttons and
it is very
colors.
I like the UI. It's nice.
Yeah, that's really what it is.
The incremental updates whenever it happens, like the Geralt update, I was just like, oh, like there's my boy Geralt. He's just hanging out there. That was cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Zelkor is an awesome wallet. I'm a big fan. It's actually, I use both Zelkor and X Wallet fairly regularly. So,
well, you mentioned seeing the smart contract code, and whenever there's a smart contract initiated through Zelkor, especially on the Kadena blockchain, that contract code comes through before you sign. So you are able to analyze it, to make sure, hey, it's like signing a contract in person. You want to read that thing before you put your signature on it.
You should absolutely know what you're signing. I mean, there are exploits and hacks out, or I shouldn't even say it's not really a hack, but there are these issues that occur out there all the time where people interact with smart contracts that they don't have an understanding of and then wonder where all their ETH went.
Right.
And it's like, you signed it away. I think Doug actually brought up recently that they're implementing like a safe transfer functionality as well, which just like further strengthens security of Kadena. So
yeah, where you would send the code, you have to send the signing code to the person who's receiving. So they plug that in, and then you complete the transaction, and then when the two codes match on each end. Yeah, I saw that. It was actually very interesting. Practically, I think it'll be even more interesting to kind of figure out how that would work. Perhaps there's a messaging layer or something like that. Where in the future you're able to kind of open up, some kind of IM instant message or something like that, where they can send. Here's the code you got to plug in. Cool.
I think there is a messaging app on Kadena that just writes to the blockchain and then interpolates from that or extrapolates from that the actual messages. I think Thanos built it.
Oh, neat. Okay.
I haven't played with it, but I know it's been talked about. So it seems pretty cool to me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I only bring that up because in the Flux ecosystem, all of the nodes communicate with each other on a messaging layer. So that would be new information coming in, like, hey, an app was just purchased. Now it's right. You have to spawn the app across the network, and all of that kind of communication is done on a messaging layer. But of course, this would be, for something like that, it would have to be encrypted.
Yeah.
But very interesting stuff. So as far as Cadex goes, we talked about the DAO aspect, the community aspect, how there's going to be some really cool perks in terms of providing liquidity and what you would be able to earn in terms of percentages for providing liquidity. And the other side of it is the speed, the security, and how inexpensive it is in terms of gas fees, which you said Cadex is completely subsidizing. So you can't beat that. I mean, I don't know that you're going to find a DEX out there that gives you free gas. And
I think, yeah.
These days, gas ain't cheap. Doesn't matter where you are.
No. That's true. Yeah, and I mean, we really are trying to embody this, also this idea of like full decentralization. And we're doing that through our DAO and also through actually deploying Cadex onto Flux. So we'll be hosting Cadex on Flux in a decentralized way. Obviously, if you're operating on a DEX, you don't want your DEX to go down.
Right.
And you don't ever really want a blockchain to go down, which of course has been an issue recently as well.
Yes, it has.
But
another familiar story.
Another
twice in the same month.
It's like they're connected or something. I don't know what's going on there. Seems like there just might be like problems with their tech or whatever. I don't know. Anyways,
proof of history. Well, those are two parts of history that you can't. It's always going to be written on there. Hey, it went down for 3 days. Well, is what it is. This is part of the space.
Yeah.
And the Flux's approach to stuff like that, and I'm poking fun, but things were squared away. They got things up and running.
Absolutely.
We kind of see ourselves as supporting others in the space. That's kind of what it is. We're also working on our own consensus algorithm update. We have a very unique version of Equihash called Zelhash that was custom created just for the project. But we're going to take that into the next layer, or the next level, I should say, proof of useful work. So we're and the goal with that hopefully would be to share that with the other projects in the community, and those who would find that to be a valuable consensus algorithm to use for themselves or adopt, then by all means, that's why I say, there's the open source kind of side of Flux, which is really community driven and also, wants to give back to the community. To that end, we have also the node network, which offers the computational resources to run dApps, just like Cadex or even Chainweb, the Kadena nodes, So
right.
We've already kind of established that kind of relationship with Kadena. So it's great to see the next iteration of that in this, very forward-thinking version of a DEX. I would venture it is probably one of the most decentralized DEXs that you could get.
We're super decentralized. We're insanely decentralized. I mean, even when it comes down to pure voting, for example, a lot of other dApps and projects, you'll see the initial founding team has like a pretty big tranche of tokens. Like I think the average is like 10 to 20%. And then on top of that, there's like VC backing, which accounts for another probably large percentage, although I'm not going to generalize here. Except I just did, but whatever. And then when it comes to the actual users, they're kind of left with scraps, and it becomes a tyranny of majority issue, where a core team will sort of always dictate exactly like what is done and what votes are passed, and then use like their VCs to like strong arm people as well. But the Cadex team, we only have 5% of the supply. That being said, we're also implementing the social governance system I spoke of earlier, Vibe Dust. And the ability to actually submit proposals is tied to that Vibe Dust system. And like, I won't be exempt from it. So if I wanted to submit a proposal on chain, later down the road, once like we've progressively decentralized to that point, I would have to hold like a specific rank in the DAO. Because our goal is to like progressively decentralize Cadex to the point of it being like a true full DAO. I think a lot of other projects sort of are trying to achieve that and trying to build things to achieve that, but they are restricted by like third-party interest in their project or investment in their project. We have absolutely no VC investment, by the way. We're completely community funded. We're completely like decentralized in terms of our funding. And we're actually running our public sale right now, which as of today, we've hit just around 52% of KDX sold in that sale, which we're really happy about. Honestly.
Excellent. How many, this is the first day?
So
when did it start?
February 1st.
Okay, so we're 4 days in as of the recording of this video. 4 days in.
Yes, 4 days in, 51%
and 51%. Wow.
Yeah,
that's excellent.
And I mean, that being said, 51% sold with a full KYC on users and a relatively low cap. And the low cap is there to ensure that like it's a truly decentralized or like a decentralized sale. We didn't want people who could just like come in and be like, I'm going to buy like a huge amount of the supply and then determine that, because that just creates problems with centralization. Yeah. So everything we're doing with Cadex is to ensure that we can eventually be the most decentralized DEX possible.
Mm-hmm. And then when you combine all that with running on a decentralized network like Flux, that has the app running on multiple nodes,
exactly,
because the whole point is if one node goes down, then you have multiple others there to pick up wherever that, right. You could also access those nodes, provided you knew the IP address of them. You could access them directly. As
Cadex will never go down.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I know, right? You gotta be careful now.
I can't say that.
But no, that's the idea, once you have it spanned across global, that's awesome. And then it's load balanced based on where you are. Very, very good stuff. So given we're about, a few days in with this public sale, what kind of vision do you have for the future with Cadex? Like, where do you see Cadex in the next year or 3 years?
I think, there's so much we're working on. It's hard to like pinpoint like one specific thing to talk about. Look, with Cadex, we're building a lot more than just a DEX. Like Cadex started off as a DEX, like an interpretation of the Kadena swap AMM contract that we added our own tokenomics to and our own contracts on top of. But now we're we've launched a full web extension wallet. We're expanding into lending as well this coming year. We're looking at building out our own full-on DAO like platform for other dApps to actually utilize for their governance system, which ideally would be an incredibly decentralized platform as well. And the first iteration of that will be going live at launch with Cadex. There's so much we want to do for Kadena and for DeFi as a whole. And I think the possibilities are really limitless. The rest of the Cadex team, we all feel very strongly in the future of like true decentralization, true community involvement, and true like DeFi at its very core. And I think there's no like one event that I can really say is like going to be more outstanding than the others, because everything we're doing in my eyes is revolutionary in some capacity, be it like solving like governance issues or creating a infinitely better user experience for a DEX. Where do I even begin? So
well,
I think
we could look at the current DEX models that are out there and see all of the weaknesses and see where the challenges are. And so it already seems as though you're coming at it from, all right, we've got to one up that, because when you add all these extra components, at least under the hood, people may not see that, right? It's a lot of the stuff that they may not see.
Yeah.
But then there's that aspect of it being fully decentralized with all of the tools needed to provide the security that people want.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, to some degree, I don't even really think of everyone. I mean, of course, everyone is competitive in this environment, but I don't personally feel that this like bloodthirsty like competition in DeFi is serving anyone's interest. I think everyone can learn from everyone else. We can all like work together to build better products. And that's, what we're doing with Cadex. Like we're doing tons of research every day into figuring out like exactly like what we can do to ensure that the end user has the best possible experience. Mm-hmm. And it takes time, of course, to do that research and build that data and model things and get everything set to ensure that we can achieve that. But at the end of the day, we just want to build cool stuff, and we want to build the best cool stuff.
Build cool stuff. That's a great quote. Stuff. Yeah. Good. So now, for more information, if somebody's interested in following the project and what progress you've been making, where can they go?
So you guys can you can follow us on Twitter at Cadex Official. You can join our Discord at discord.gg/Cadex. We do have a Telegram. It's announcements only. And if you are ever invited to another Telegram that is sending you anything that tells you to sign up for stuff, don't join it. Like, just be careful on Telegram is all I have to say.
Yeah.
And so it's really just Twitter, Discord for most stuff.
Okay, and the main site where people can find Cadex?
And Cadex.com, of course.
Cadex.com. Okay, good. Yeah. Great. And
if you're interested in the public sale right now, we're running it through Tokensoft, and that is at cadex.tokensoft.io.
At Cadex at tokensoft.io.
Cadex.tokensoft.io.
All right, Cadex.tokensoft.io. We'll have those links down in the description for people so that they can check it out themselves. And I think that's very, very interesting. It's been really good to talk to you, Grant. Thank you so much for taking the time. And we really wish you the best with this launch and the continued success with the sale. I hope you sell 100%.
I do too. It'd be awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well,
but yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate this opportunity. I've been a fan of the podcast for a while, so it's cool to be here.
It's great to have you here. Cool. Well, hope you'll come back, and we can check in with you maybe in 6 months and see how things are going.
That sounds good to me. Yeah, I'm sure we'll have a lot more to share with you then as well.
Grant Gerber of Kadex, thank you so much for being with us. I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.